Senator Kennedy is being challenged in that Senate race by a candidate in his first run for political office. Mitt Romney is the son of George Romney, the former governor of Michigan. Since 1977, Mitt Romney's been involved in business investing. He has degrees from Brigham Young University and from the Harvard Law and Business Schools. He's married and has 5 children. Political observers say the Boston suburbs may be a decisive factor in the Senate race, and Mitt Romney spent part of last week in Burlington, which is just north of Boston. He spoke at a business roundtable breakfast on Wednesday and then walked the streets of Waltham. Mitt Romney was born in Michigan, but has lived in Massachusetts for 23 years, and as I mentioned, this is his first run for public office.
Every now and then someone says, why in the world did you get into this? Why did you leave private life, the privacy you knew at home, and decide to get into a race against, of all people, Ted Kennedy? A little story will help break the ice on that topic. There's a story of the Texan that wanted to go polar bear hunting in Alaska. And so he went up to Alaska, went to an igloo where he could find some guides, went in and talked to some Eskimos, and they were there preparing their nets and their knives and their ropes and spears for polar bear hunting. And he said, I'd like to go polar bear hunting. They said, fine. They started gathering these things. He said, hey, no, you don't need any of that. Let's just go out and grab these bears and break their necks with our hands. And they said, look, in Texas, you got these little, brown bears about this high. But up here in Alaska, these things are 15 feet high, outstretched. You don't just grab them and break their necks. Well, Texan wanted nothing to do with that. So he left the igloo and, went off on his own. A little while later, the Eskimos heard these indistinct words, open the door. Couldn't quite understand it, so they had to listen more carefully. Heard the words, open the door. And so they opened the door of the igloo, and they saw coming down a high hill in the distance, this Texan running like crazy, right behind him a polar bear. And he was running just fast as he could, and when he got all the way to the igloo, he got right to the door, and just as he got there, he stepped aside. And the polar bear shot inside the igloo. He shut the door, and he said, you guys skin that one, I'll go get another one. Now, I've been living here for 23 years, and I've been saying, somebody ought to go after that guy. Somebody ought to do something about this. Somebody ought to fix that. Why is Ted Kennedy doing this? It's taking us in the wrong direction. Look what's happening to education. Why isn't someone doing something? And finally, about a year ago, my wife in bed one morning said, you got to run against Ted Kennedy. I just about fell out of bed. And she said it again, you've got to do it. We've been so fortunate. We've been so blessed in our experience here, and no one's going to run against him that actually can beat him. And she sort of laid out the obligation of citizenship. If you're in a position to make a unique contribution, as a citizen, you have an obligation to do so. And I was convinced, and she was convinced, that I could make a unique contribution. And that's what brings me here. That's why I'm in the middle of this. I believe it's absolutely essential that we change the course we're headed in as a country and as a state. Because as the country goes, we, of course, are affected as a state as well.